2AC straight down.
Seeing the order battle.
Okay. Our framework is the judge to evaluate between a topic policy option defended by the affirmative for the status quo or counterplan policy option, competitive policy option. There are at least three separate and independent links to our framework. If we win any of them, it's a reason to reject the affirmative. First is informed decision making. By skewing predictable ground, the affirmative destroys our ability to have an informed discussion on their arguments. We can't rigorously test the merits of their approach. Informed discussion is a prerequisite for signing the valid, fair, and rigorous test of both teams' argument. It's necessary to truthfully evaluate them. If they win the risk of offense, you shouldn't evaluate their arguments because the deliberative structure is flawed. Second is emotional hijack. Our framework excludes personal stories and narratives. This prevents emotional disruptions and a dramatic metaphors being relived. You should adopt the precautionary principle when evaluating this because it is impossible to know when the line might be pushed too far. Third is reciprocal literature. The works of policy advocates and critical speculators can't be judged by the same standards as first. This lowers the burden of work from their evidence, which makes debating fundamentally unfair. And voting F is basically a hollow victory because we're unable to rigorously test the affirmative. It's much like Saddam's election system, election wins, when no one was allowed to challenge him where his arguments is the same type of example when nobody is allowed to engage in these types of arguments. It leads to hollow victories where nobody has any kind of rigorous discussion. Remember, they say that we have to have a type of dialogue. When they don't allow for that same type of dialogue, then there is no form of equal engagement which they try to advocate. Also, our strively evidence indicates the Supreme Court is the necessary action for which we can have an agreed upon level, which is a topic necessitates the Supreme Court action, which means we should start from that basic premise. And plus, remember, they own the argument is that they don't take any kind of action, which means we can't counterplan. Is a unique reason why we can't engage in any kind of offense. Their argument is why we have to deal with liberating. Oppressed means that the negative will never be able to win because they cannot counterplan out of these types of policies or not engage in separate type of arguments, which is bad because the negative will never be able to engage in alternate type of discussion, which they say is necessary for liberating the press. Their first argument is there for your evidence. However, they are conceding way too many arguments on this. Freer does not assume the type of approach which is necessary and approaches the liberation of oppressed fail to value life and erase difference. It makes oppressed dependent on the external paternalistic sources of knowledge. This is hindrance. In 98, betrayal of the oppressed assumes that people do not ethically respect their lives is dangerous assumption which leads to devaluation of people's perspective. This is disturbing. Failure to recognize local peoples theorize communities as part of the community life. This dichotomizes popular knowledge with the external benefit of the experts. It devalues the existence of many different forms of knowledge. It excludes the dynamics of social difference and significance of different value systems, which are complexity of personal experience. And next is the theories of liberation of the oppressed and inherently essentialized preventing multi-dimensional readings of identity empirically. Intentionality is not a shield. This is Tan in 98. Freer's advantages and fundamentally shortcomings cannot be overlooked. This major gap lies in the failure to incorporate and to interrogate race and gender relations within the intense theme of oppression. Class struggles mounted in the name of the oppressive historically consistently displaced or subsumed the desperate struggles of women and people of color beneath the homogenized rhetoric pedagogies of liberation and equality, obliterating multiple identities that people take within dialectics and oppressors and oppressed. We are the oppressed. Freer and teachers refrain from engaging in the self-reflection of knowledge, their own practices of oppression as educators within that academy privileges the heterosexual middle white class able-bodied men crews. They're not able to solve. They say the predictability limits are bad. However, our strively evidence indicates that these types of engaged limits as well as these type of standard limits are critical to engage in the same type of dialogue which you want to be able to engage in, which means we have to have the starting part. Our candidate evidence indicates specifically you should not have these type of emotional discussions because that would lead to people being limited out of your own type of debate, which means you cause these same types of exclusionary limits. Also, our arguments suggest that we have to have a proper form of engagement proves even if we lose the limits of predictability debate, the fact that we cannot engage in the type of dialogue which they insist upon means that their project is doomed to failure. They say that we should agree on a different type of topic because this topic is biased. However, you have conceded our Galloway evidence, which indicates that you can change the debate topic process by arguing on a debate time and team wrong. However, that within a tournament format is too little too late because our negative will never be able to predict these types of arguments, or we can never engage in their type of personal stories without leading to a competitive attacks on the other person, which devalues their own emotional stories. It also shifts the focus away from those stories, which is what our candidate evidence argues. They say competitive equity is bad. However, that is all above us. Why this type of informed decision making is necessary for these types of predictability as well as our emotional hijacking arguments, which in case debate consists of adversarial relationships. Our opponents are trying to win the tournament, the battle, the speaker awards, and shining cardboard. All that stakes this adversarial setting is not an appropriate form for a psychologically beneficial exchange. They have no offense to why debate round is necessary to engage in this type of dialogue. There's no reason why we should have to engage in dialogue within the debate context. They say, provide plenty of ground, however, you contradict yourself later on when you say that you don't take any kind of action, which means we are unable to counterplay, which means that we can never engage in this type of question as to how we should have ended oppression better, or who ends oppression better. They won't even defend or type of advocacy or overruling the board's decision, which means negative is always left short shifted. Their next argument is the counter-interpretation sovereignty lies with people. However, is still does not allow any kind of negative engagement. It prevents the negative from being able to engage in the discussion of ideas. Also, the same hollow victory argument that I made above still applies to this argument because the negative is not getting any kind of negative ground. Also, this interpretation does not leave any kind of negative ground because we are not able to engage in the alternative ways in which we can liberate the oppressed from over. They won't meet their interpretation when they argue that they don't take any kind of action, which means the negative is not able to counterfeit or make any type of other interpretations. And the affirmative team is sending you to a debate Wonderland. The app is dreaming you like Alice in Wonderland. Humpty Dumpty claimed that Alice when I use it, it means that I should choose to meet neither. Nevertheless, this allows infinite regression by the affirmative. They could be out Barney, a purple dinosaur, to do their plan. But when we run topicality, they tell us that we meant Barney not to be the metaphor for the U.S. Supreme Court, which means and they should have to be stuck into is defending a stable advocacy. It is necessary for us to engage in those types of debates. They say that we can't solve for minorities because they can't turn the state. However, first is if the state can't help illegal minorities, and that's a reason to study policy-oriented issues, trying to make the laws better. All of our education arguments prove why we're the only people who can access this type of plan. And second is there's no link to this argument, doesn't implicate our framework. Those are reasons why state policies are bad, not why policy-oriented debate is bad even. And we are not forced to defend Supreme Court action towards four specific court cases. This is wholly unrelated to the issue of minority participation. Does not force the team to be able to defend state action is good. Also, supply our Galloway evidence, which indicates the rule, and shiny evidence, which indicates the only way to learn how to break down states by working and role-playing the state, because then we learn its powers. They say the type of education we get in this round is necessary. However, this proves why the negative will never be able to win, because they won't be able to engage in that same kind of type of education that you would be able to produce there. Next, argument switch side debate, decrease predictability. However, switch side debate is necessary to have this active engagement. That's our Galloway and our Sullivan evidence, which indicates the only way we can have an fair and educational debate is by working within the state and playing these types of roles. They say it causes assimilation, forces us into role-playing. However, they have no reason as to why role-playing is uniquely bad. Our Galloway evidence as well as our Sullivan evidence in specific instances of the only way we can break down the system is by trying to work within the system. They say for error and valid hooks, however, and it is all answered above as to why we have to be able to work within the system. They say that we should urge not in action. However, this does not allow for the different types of development of ideas. Just because you argue that you won't change any kind of only mindset, however, debate rounds will never be able to engage those same types of mindset changes because they are not educational enough to be able to do anything. And plus, people will just perceive things as losses, which means it's not actual policy advocacy. It means you'll never be able to solve. And here, it is necessary to learn the language. Let's see if I can find the card. There we go. And there's no mindset shifts. People attribute losses to tactics and performance, not ideology. This is Tannen. And 98. The result is a debate between adversaries, but if you pair individual points, if you never step back and actively imagine a world in which a different system of ideas could be, and you never ask how the larger system of thought relate to each other, we think of Socratic method as systematically leading to an opponent into admitting error. Our version of the Socratic method in adversary public debate is unlikely to result in opponents changing their mind. Someone who loses a debate usually attributes that loss to poor performance or an adversary's unfair tactics, which means your movement doesn't actually accomplish anything. It doesn't change the mindset or the way the dialogue is done in debate. They have no offensive reasons why their debate round, their actual engagement or reading of narratives changes the way the debate actually accomplishes. The burden of proof is on them to prove that they change the way debate actually occurs. They say, and we cause exclusion. However, extend across our Shively evidence, our agreed to a limited and pre-known topic to the resolution prerequisite for fair debate. Some exclusion is necessary because having a same starting point is critical discussion. Agreement to the question asked is necessary for debate over how to answer it. This doesn't overlimit because no agreement is all-encompassing. Having a common resolution with no specific answer means their unique application of the resolution can be different. Second is that they can do their plan topically by arguing that we should overrule Morrison and still engage in alternatives and argue that this is better to allow for the end of the oppression of women, which means that they can still engage in their narratives.
Okay. Can you tell me what kind of ground do you lose?
I mean, your argument that you don't defend a plan probably makes us lose counterplan ground, like you said.
So your plan should plan should be like U.S. overruling Morrison.
Sure. I mean, we argue that the U.S. Supreme Court is the agreed upon question prior to entering the debate tournament. That's
We
the
don't
rules of the
say
tournament.
that in the 1AC. We don't say U.S.
You
should
s-
overrule Morrison.
No, you say that we as people, we imagine that we are, the reflective idea of the Supreme Court. Our argument
Right.
is that you should have to defend that the Supreme Court should actually do that.
So why?
Why? We list several arguments. First is it's critical to engage you in the type of debate whether or not the Supreme Court should or should not do it.
I guess my question is, why is Supreme Court relevant in our discussion when it's about consciousness raising?
Right.
I
You
don't
can
understand why
argue-
this debate is
Sure,
relevant.
you can argue that the Supreme Court creates consciousness raising enough to be able to solve your project. Those type of
How
items. We
in
can
this
argue that the
debate
Supreme
room-
Court doesn't do that, which gives us negative ground to talk about policy efficacy
Yeah.
using the Supreme Court. That's what the topic is when
Yes.
we agree to debate, is that the U.S. Supreme Court should overrule one of these policies.
Okay, can you
That's the
first tell
agreed upon
me,
question.
can you tell me what card you read?
I did not read any of those cards.
Wow. Thanks. All right, so I think this is it.
Are there any other cards that you read?
Other than this two fear cards?
The two fear card and then.
Did you read this one?
No.
Sorry to put you on the spot. Can you just give me all the cards?
Yep. Top cannon card.
Okay, so you're saying that we need to have discussions about state good or bad.
Sure.
Okay. I guess you're still not answering my question. How is that relevant when we talk about South Asian women and specifically who get domestic violence, who get sexually
Right.
abused?
I mean, our argument is that that's critical for us to engage in the same type of dialogue. Our Shively evidence indicates that
How
there
does
has to be an
that-
agreed upon question, right?
How does that raise consciousness, though? How
You
does that
can-
discussion about state raise consciousness about South Asian women being raped within their
Sure.
marriages?
You can argue that if the Supreme Court did this, that would raise consciousness. That
How?
provides you a very limited interpretation by saying that an overrule of this decision has public knowledge, which means the public pays attention to the Supreme Court.
What
You could say
public?
if the Supreme Court
Who
overruled.
outside of this round gets that type of education? I don't understand
Right.
that.
Our argument is that if you say that the Supreme Court should overrule Morrison by arguing that spousal abuse is bad, or in specific instances on the grounds of blah, 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 that allows us to engage in the type of debate and engage
how
in
do we
your
have
story.
that agency to do that?
Our argument is that we should role play those types of things. That's been the one and see.
Role play the oppressor. So I should role play Yamuna's husband who raped her.
Our argument is that you should role play the Supreme Court because that is the way in which you can break down that system by learning how that system functions and
Okay.
operates. It's the only way to understand it.
All right.